Billionaire finds girl. Sleeping in the rain on the tombstone of his late beloved, whom he abandoned. Years ago, before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Thunder cracked across the night sky as Alexander Reed's Italian leather shoes sank into the muddy cemetery path. Rain poured mercilessly, soaking through his custom-tailored suit despite the expensive umbrella struggling against the wind. He rarely ventured outdoors these days, especially not to places like this, but something had pulled him here tonight. A restlessness he couldn't explain. It had been exactly 5 years since he'd last visited Rebecca's grave. 5 years of focusing on nothing but Pinnacle Enterprises, the company he'd chosen over the only woman he'd ever loved. 5 years of turning his $1 million investment into billions, accumulating the wealth and power he'd always dreamed of. 5 years of empty success. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the rows of headstones. Alexander's heart pounded as he approached the familiar marble marker. In the glow of his phone's flashlight, the engraving was simple. Rebecca Morgan, beloved daughter and mother. Mother. The word had stunned him when he'd first learned of it, months after her funeral from a mutual friend. Rebecca had been pregnant when he'd left her to pursue his ambitions. By then, Alexander had been too deep in his first major business deal to process what that might mean. Too focused on becoming the man he thought he needed to be. He was about to place the single white rose on her grave when his light caught something unexpected. A small mound beside the headstone, covered by what looked like a child's raincoat. Alexander stepped closer, confused. The mound moved. "Hello?" he called, his voice almost lost in the downpour. The shape stirred. Alexander's breath caught as a small face emerged from beneath the raincoat. A little girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, with dark hair plastered to her forehead by the rain. But it was her eyes that froze him in place, deep brown and almond-shaped, unmistakably like Rebecca's. "Who are you?" Alexander asked, crouching down despite the mud ruining his pants. "What are you doing out here alone? Where are your parents?" The child rubbed her eyes, looking at him with a mixture of sleep and something else. "Recognition? Daddy?" she whispered, her voice small but clear even through the storm. "Did you finally come like Mommy said you would?" Alexander felt as though he'd been struck by lightning. The rose slipped from his fingers as the world tilted beneath him. What did you say?" he stammered, his heart thundering louder than the storm. "You're my daddy," the little girl said, more confident now. "I have your picture, the one with you and Mommy when you were younger." She touched the gravestone beside her. "I told Mommy you'd come someday. She's sleeping now, but she can hear us." Alexander couldn't breathe. The implications crashed through him like waves. This child, sleeping on Rebecca's grave in the pouring rain, those eyes so like the woman he'd once planned a future with. "What's your name?" he managed to ask, his voice barely audible. "Lily," she answered, pushing wet hair from her face. "Lily Morgan Reed. Aunt Sarah said I have your last name, because Mommy wanted me to, even though you were too busy to be with us." Each word pierced Alexander like a physical blow. Too busy. The simple truth from a child's lips cut deeper than any business rival's critique ever had. "Lily," he repeated, tasting the name of the daughter he never knew he had. "Why are you out? Here alone in the rain? Where's your Aunt Sarah?" "At home." Lily's chin trembled slightly. "She fell asleep and I wanted to tell Mommy about my drawing. I do that sometimes when I miss her a lot. But then it started raining and I got scared." Alexander instinctively removed his suit jacket and wrapped it around the shivering child. It engulfed her tiny frame, making her look even smaller. "We need to get you somewhere warm and dry," he said, trying to sound calm despite the emotional earthquake inside him. "And we need to call your aunt. She must be worried sick." "Are you taking me home?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with hope that Alexander knew he didn't deserve. He hesitated, overwhelmed by the enormity of what was happening. A daughter. He had a daughter who'd been sleeping on her mother's grave in the rain, waiting for a father who never came. "Yes," he finally answered, his voice breaking. I'll take you home. As he carefully lifted Lily into his arms, protecting her from the rain with his umbrella, Alexander felt something crack inside his chest, the hard shell of ambition and isolation he'd built around himself for 5 years. Lily nestled against him with complete trust, her small arms wrapping around his neck. I knew you'd come someday, she whispered against his shoulder. Mommy said you would when you weren't busy anymore. Alexander tightened his hold on this miracle child he'd never known, tears mixing with raindrops on his face. For all his business acumen, all his strategic brilliance, he couldn't fathom how he would navigate this moment or what would come after. All he knew was that everything in his carefully constructed life had just changed forever. And as he carried his daughter away from her mother's grave, Alexander Reed, the man worth billions who had sacrificed love for success, had never felt poorer. Lightning flashed as Alexander's Bentley pulled up to the modest apartment building. The navigation system had guided him to an address hastily provided by emergency services after he'd called about Lily. The dispatcher, hearing that he'd found a child alone in a cemetery, had immediately contacted Lily's guardian while sending police to meet them at a nearby diner. The questions from the officer had been pointed suspicious. Alexander's expensive suit and watch had done him no favors in explaining why he was with a child who called him Daddy, but whom he admitted he'd never met before. Only Lily's insistence that he was indeed her father had prevented a more complicated situation. Now, as the building's front door burst open, Alexander saw a woman race toward the car, panic etched on her face. Lily, she cried as Alexander helped the girl from the back seat. Aunt Sarah, I found Daddy, Lily exclaimed, running to the woman who scooped her up in a fierce embrace. Sarah's eyes, red from crying, locked onto Alexander with a mixture of shock and hostility. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something harder. You, she said flatly, clutching Lily tighter. Alexander stepped forward, rain still dripping from his clothes. I'm Alexander Reed. I found Lily at the cemetery. I know exactly who you are, Sarah replied, her voice tight. 5 years too late. Lily looked between them, confusion clouding her small features. Aunt Sarah, it's Daddy. From the pictures. Sarah's expression softened only when addressing Lily. Let's get you inside, sweetheart. You're soaking wet. She glanced back at Alexander. You'd better come up too. We need to talk. The apartment was small but warm, filled with children's drawings and photographs. Alexander felt profoundly out of place among the mismatched furniture and humble surroundings, so different from his minimalist penthouse. After settling Lily in, a bath supervised by a neighbor called in to help, Sarah returned to the living room where Alexander stood awkwardly examining photos on the wall. Many showed Rebecca, her smile just as he remembered, holding various stages of Lily's growth. In none of them did Rebecca look as healthy as he remembered. She tried to tell you, Sarah said, breaking the silence. When she found out she was pregnant, called you for weeks. Alexander turned, a framed photo in his hands, Rebecca in a hospital bed holding newborn Lily. I never knew. Because you never answered, Sarah replied without sympathy. Too busy becoming a billionaire to take calls from the woman you left behind. I would have. What? Come back? Helped? Sarah shook her head. Save it? Rebecca didn't believe that either, which is why she eventually stopped trying. Alexander carefully set down the photo. When did she? 3 months ago. Cancer. She fought for 2 years. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Single mother working 2 jobs with no health insurance. By the time they caught it, the unfinished sentence hung between them like a sentence. She never told Lily the truth about you, Sarah continued. Created this fantasy about her daddy being away on important business, that he'd come back someday when he wasn't busy anymore. Even showed her that stupid magazine cover with you on it. 30 under. 30 business genius. Alexander remembered that cover, his first major publicity. He'd sent a copy to Rebecca, a petty gesture to show her what she was missing by not supporting his ambitions. I had no idea, he said, the words pathetically inadequate. Well, now you do. Sarah crossed her arms. So, what happens now, Mr. Reed? You've met the daughter you never knew existed, going back to your billion-dollar life tomorrow? The question hit him like a physical blow because it exposed the truth. That was exactly what he'd been considering in some corner of his mind. Return to normal. Perhaps set up a trust fund. Before he could answer, Lily appeared in fuzzy pajamas, her wet hair combed back. "Daddy, are you staying?" she asked, hope brightening her eyes. Alexander looked at this child, his child, and felt something shift inside him. "Not tonight, Princess," he answered gently, "but I'd like to see you again. If that's okay with your Aunt Sarah." Sarah's expression was guarded. "We'll discuss that after Lily's in bed." As Lily hugged him goodnight, a hug he had done nothing to earn, Alexander made a silent promise to the woman whose grave he'd visited and the daughter she'd protected, even in death. This time, he wouldn't walk away. The receptionist at Pinnacle Enterprises did a double take as Alexander Reed walked through the lobby without his usual briefcase. For the first time in 5 years, the CEO had canceled his morning meetings. "Hold all my calls unless it's an emergency," he instructed, striding toward the elevator. "And find me everything you can about children's activities for 4-year-olds. Inside his corner office, Alexander stared at the Manhattan skyline that had once symbolized everything he wanted. Now it felt hollow compared to the memory of Lily's trusting eyes. After heated negotiation the previous night, Sarah had reluctantly agreed to supervised visits, starting that afternoon. Alexander had exactly 4 hours to prepare for something no business school had trained him for: being a father. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from his COO about a pending acquisition. Alexander hesitated, then silenced it. Some priorities had suddenly shifted. Sarah's expression remained guarded as she opened the apartment door. Alexander stood there holding a small teddy bear, the only gift that had felt appropriate after he'd dismissed his assistant's suggestions of extravagant toys. "You're on time," Sarah noted, surprise evident in her voice. "That's something." Lily appeared behind her aunt, face lighting up when she spotted Alexander. "Daddy, you came back." Her enthusiasm struck him like a physical force. How could this child be so happy to see someone who had never been there for her? "I promised I would," he replied, kneeling to her height. Lily took the bear with reverence. "I'm going to name him Mr. Business," she declared, "because he looks serious like you." Sarah's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "We'll be at the park around the corner. 2 hours as agreed." As they walked to the neighborhood playground, Lily slipped her small hand into Alexander's as naturally as if they'd done it 100 times before. He found himself adjusting his stride to her tiny steps, something he'd never done for anyone. "Mommy said you build big buildings," Lily said, looking up at him. "Not exactly," Alexander corrected gently. "I invest in companies. Help them grow." Lily considered this. "Like watering plants?" "Something like that." He smiled, surprised by her perceptiveness. At the playground, Alexander experienced a new kind of insecurity. Other parents seemed to instinctively know what to do, how to push swings just right, when to step in, when to step back. He felt conspicuously out of place, in his casual clothes that still cost more than what most people here made in a week. "Higher, Daddy," Lily called as he pushed her swing too cautiously. "I don't want you to fall," he replied. "I won't. Mommy pushed me super high." The casual mention of Rebecca sent a pang through Alexander's chest. He pushed a little higher, rewarded by Lily's delighted laughter. Later, sitting on a bench watching Lily make sand cakes, Alexander noticed a worn book peeking from her small backpack. "What's this?" he asked, pulling out a tattered copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. Lily's face brightened. "Mommy's favorite. She read it every night. Now Aunt Sarah reads it, but she doesn't do the voices right." Alexander opened the book, noticing Rebecca's handwriting on the inside cover. "To my Lily, real isn't how you are made, but a thing that happens when someone loves you for a very long time." His throat tightened as he recognized the quote from the story. Will you read it? Lily asked, abandoning her sand creations to climb beside him. I'm not very good at voices, Alexander admitted. That's okay. You can learn, Lily said, with the simple confidence of childhood. As Alexander began reading, awkwardly at first, then with growing animation, he glimpsed the life Rebecca had built without him. Bedtime stories, playground visits, small moments, filled with meaning that his wealth-focused existence lacked entirely. When Sarah returned to collect them, she found Alexander and Lily deeply engrossed in the story, both oblivious to the sand covering their clothes. Time to go, she announced, her expression unreadable. But we're not finished, Lily protested. Alexander closed the book carefully. We can continue next time, he promised, surprised by how much he wanted there to be a next time. Walking them back to the apartment, Alexander gathered his courage. I'd like to see her again. Maybe twice a week? Sarah studied him, searching for something in his face. This isn't a game, Reed. She's already attached to you. If you disappear. I won't, Alexander interrupted, with the same certainty he used in boardrooms. I know I have no right to ask for your trust, but I'm asking for a chance. After a long moment, Sarah nodded slightly. Tuesday and Friday afternoons. Don't be late. As he said goodbye to Lily, Alexander realized something disquieting. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about work, investments, or his next acquisition. Instead, he was wondering if the children's bookstore he'd passed might have other books Lily would enjoy. Alexander Reed, who had built an empire by focusing solely on the bottom line, was learning that some forms of wealth couldn't be measured on balance sheets. Alexander parked his Audi, notably not the Bentley, he'd used the first night outside Lily's preschool. After 3 weeks of consistent visits, Sarah had cautiously agreed he could pick Lily up today. His heart raced with nervousness that no billion-dollar negotiation had ever caused. When the doors opened and children streamed out, Alexander spotted Lily immediately. She wore a blue dress with yellow flowers and carried a paper in her hand, her face scanning the crowd of parents until she found him. Her expression brightened instantly. Daddy, she called, running toward him. Something warmed in Alexander's chest at the sound of that word, a title he'd done nothing to earn but was desperately trying to deserve now. Hello, princess, he said, kneeling to her level as she crashed into his arms. I drew a picture of us, Lily announced, holding up a colorful crayon drawing showing 2 stick figures, one tall with a tie, one small with pigtails, holding hands. It's beautiful, Alexander said, genuinely touched. Can I keep it? I made it for your office, Lily explained, as if this had been obvious. Aunt Sarah says you work in a very tall building. Alexander pictured his minimalist office with its modern art and sleek furniture. Lily's drawing would be completely out of place, and yet suddenly more valuable than anything else there. Perfect. I'll put it where everyone can see it. In the voiture car, Lily chatted about her day with the unfiltered enthusiasm only children possess. Alexander listened with a focus he usually reserved for major investors, finding her preschool politics and crayon preferences surprisingly engaging. They arrived at the local ice cream parlor, a place Alexander would never have entered a month ago but was now becoming a regular customer. Mommy always got strawberry, Lily said as they waited in line. She said it reminded her of summer days. Alexander felt that familiar pang whenever Lily mentioned Rebecca so casually. Did she? I remember she loved strawberries in college. We used to. He trailed off, unsure how to continue. Used to what? Lily prompted, always eager for stories about her parents together. We used to have picnics sometimes. By the lake on campus, she would bring strawberries for dessert. Lily nodded solemnly. She told me about those picnics. She said you would read her your boring business books, but she didn't mind because she liked your voice. Alexander nearly dropped his wallet. Rebecca had told Lily about those days? After how things had ended? What else did she tell you? He asked carefully as they sat with their ice cream. That you were super smart and going to build important things? That you had to go away but you didn't want to? Lily licked her chocolate scoop. She said you looked like a prince in your graduation clothes. Alexander's throat tightened. The picture Rebecca had painted for their daughter was so much kinder than the reality, that he'd left her behind when she wouldn't relocate for his first major job opportunity, that he'd been too ambitious to consider compromise, that when she'd called months later, he'd been too focused on impressing his new bosses to take her calls. "Daddy, why are you sad?" Lily's question snapped him back to the present. "I'm not sad," he said automatically, then corrected himself. "Well, maybe a little. I miss your mom too." Lily put her small hand on his. "It's okay. She knows. I tell her everything when I visit her special garden, the cemetery." Alexander hadn't returned since that rainy night. "Can I show you something?" Lily asked, digging in her small backpack. She pulled out a worn photograph protected in a plastic sandwich bag. Alexander recognized it immediately. Him and Rebecca at their college graduation, his arm around her shoulders, both grinning at the camera with the certainty that life would unfold exactly as they planned. "I keep it always," Lily explained proudly. "Mommy said it was the day you both became grown-ups, but you were still having fun." She studied his face. "You don't smile like that in your magazine pictures." Out of the mouths of babes. Alexander couldn't remember the last time he genuinely smiled for a photograph. His publicity shots were all calculated to project confidence and authority, not happiness. "No," he agreed softly. "I don't." "Why not?" Alexander considered how to answer, looking into eyes so like Rebecca's. "Because I forgot what was really important." As they finished their ice cream, Lily asked if they could visit the special garden soon. Alexander promised they would, though the thought filled him with dread and longing in equal measure. Driving her home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Alexander found himself making a detour, driving past the high-rise where his penthouse occupied, the top floor, then turning toward the cemetery where everything had changed. He parked outside but didn't wake Lily or go in. Looking at his sleeping daughter in the rearview mirror, Alexander made a silent promise to Rebecca. "I will be worthy of how you remembered me to her. I will become the man you told her I was." It was, he realized, the most important contract he would ever make. "I have a proposition," Alexander said, sliding a manila envelope across Sarah's kitchen table. Lily was asleep in her room after an afternoon at the zoo, their 6th outing in 3 weeks. Sarah eyed the envelope suspiciously. "What's this?" "Open it." She did, pulling out documents and a check that made her inhale sharply. "What the hell is this?" "Financial support," Alexander explained, his tone businesslike. "A trust for Lily's education, medical expenses, a housing allowance. The neighborhood here is decent, but I found a 3-bedroom condo closer to—" "Stop." Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "Just stop. Is it not enough? Because I can— This isn't about money." Sarah pushed the papers back toward him. "This is about you thinking you can swoop in with your billions and fix everything." Alexander frowned. "I'm trying to provide for my daughter." "No, you're trying to ease your guilt." Sarah's eyes flashed. "Rebecca raised Lily for 4 years without your help. She worked 2 jobs while going through chemo. She refused to declare bankruptcy when the medical bills piled up." "That's exactly my point," Alexander insisted. "She shouldn't have had to struggle. Lily shouldn't have to live in a neighborhood with metal detectors at her school." Sarah laughed bitterly. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't some investment opportunity where you throw money at a problem until it goes away. You can't buy your way into being her father. I'm not trying to buy anything. I just want what's best for her." "What's best for her?" Sarah stood, hands pressed against the table. "What's best for Lily is stability, love, consistency, things you know nothing about." Alexander felt heat rise in his face. "I've been here, every time I said I would be. I haven't missed a single visit." "Congratulations on doing the bare minimum for 5 weeks. Want a trophy?" Her words stung because they exposed his own insecurity, that he was playing at fatherhood without understanding its true depth. Rebecca would want her to have opportunities. He tried again. Don't you dare presume to know what Rebecca would want. Sarah's voice shook. She wanted you to answer her calls when she was pregnant. She wanted you there for Lily's birth. She wanted you at her hospital bedside. Each statement hit Alexander like a physical blow. I didn't know. Because you chose not to know. Your secretary blocked her calls. Your doorman turned her away. Your choice. The silence that followed was broken by a small voice. Why are you fighting? They turned to find Lily in the doorway, clutching Mr. Business, the teddy bear Alexander had given her. Her eyes were wide with confusion. Sarah immediately softened. We're not fighting, sweetie. Just having a grown-up discussion. Lily looked unconvinced, her gaze moving to the papers on the table, then to Alexander. Are you leaving, Daddy? The naked fear in her voice shattered something in Alexander. No, Princess, he said, kneeling to her level. I'm not leaving. After tucking Lily back into bed, Alexander returned to find Sarah gathering the documents. Take these with you, she said quietly. Lily doesn't need a bigger apartment or an expensive school. She needs a father who sees her value isn't measured by a price tag. As Alexander drove home, he realized with crushing clarity that he had made exactly the same mistake with Lily that he had with Rebecca, believing money could substitute for genuine presence and love. It was the only language he'd been fluent in for so long, and it wasn't enough. Not even close. 23 days. Alexander stared at his calendar, the red X mark spanning more than 3 weeks since he'd last seen Lily. After the disastrous financial offer, Sarah had curtly informed him that they needed space to reconsider the arrangement. His twice-weekly visits became phone calls, then text messages from Sarah's phone with updates that grew increasingly brief. She's doing fine, busy with school projects. Not a good week for visits. Maybe next week. Lily's got a cold, better not to expose you. Each excuse twisted the knife deeper. In his penthouse overlooking the city, Alexander poured himself a scotch and walked to the window. The skyline that once represented his triumphant rise now seemed to mock him. What good was commanding these towers when he couldn't even maintain connection with one small child? Lily's crayon drawing, now professionally framed, sat on his otherwise immaculate desk. Beside it stood the single photograph he had of her, taken during their zoo visit. Her smile as she watched the seals perform revealed a missing front tooth. He hadn't noticed until seeing the picture. His assistant Linda knocked gently. The board members are waiting in the conference room, sir. Cancel it, Alexander said without turning. But the Tokyo acquisition, I said cancel it. He faced her, seeing the surprise in her expression. In fact, clear my schedule for the afternoon. After Linda left, Alexander picked up the photo of Lily. What had Sarah said? Stability, love, consistency, things he knew nothing about. His entire empire was built on calculated risks, leveraged positions, strategic moves. Not on being there, day after day for ordinary moments. No wonder Sarah didn't trust him with her niece's heart. The buzzing of his phone interrupted his thoughts. A text from Sarah. Lily's school play is tomorrow, 2 p.m. She's playing a sunflower. Nothing more. No explicit invitation. But it wasn't a rejection either. That night, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He drove to the modest neighborhood where he and Rebecca had shared their first apartment during college, before ambition had consumed him. The building looked smaller than he remembered, shabbier, yet he felt a strange nostalgia seeing the fire, escape where they'd sit on summer evenings planning their future. He'd promised her the world but delivered only absence. On impulse, Alexander continued driving until he reached the cemetery. Unlike the stormy night he'd found Lily, tonight was clear and eerily quiet. He found Rebecca's grave easily now, illuminated by moonlight. I don't know what I'm doing, he confessed to the marble stone. I thought I could fix everything if I just applied enough resources. But she doesn't need my money. He ran a hand through his hair. She needs me. And I don't know how to be what she needs. The silence offered no answers, only the weight of missed opportunities. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A small fairy figurine nestled against the headstone, surrounded by tiny pebbles arranged in a circle. Lily's handiwork, no doubt. The evidence of her visits, her connection to the mother she'd lost, touched Alexander deeply. While he'd spent 5 years accumulating wealth, Rebecca had spent those same years nurturing their daughter's heart, teaching her to love even in absence. And what had he taught Lily in their brief time together? That problems could be solved with a checkbook? The next day, Alexander arrived at Lily's school 30 minutes early, dressed not in his usual bespoke suit but in casual clothes that wouldn't make him stand out among the other parents. He carried no gifts, no grand gestures, only his presence and a humbled heart. When Sarah spotted him waiting quietly in the back of the auditorium, her surprise was evident. She approached cautiously. "You came," she said, not a question but an acknowledgement. "She's my daughter," Alexander replied simply. "Where else would I be?" The school auditorium buzzed with parental excitement as children in plant costumes filled the stage. Alexander's eyes remained fixed on the small figure in yellow and green. Lily, the most enthusiastic sunflower in the production, beaming with pride. When she spotted him in the audience, her face lit up with such joy that Alexander felt his chest tighten. She waved frantically, nearly knocking over the cardboard tree beside her. He waved back, aware of Sarah watching this exchange from several seats away. After the performance, children streamed into the audience seeking parental approval. Lily broke away from her classmates and ran straight for Alexander. "Daddy, you came!" She crashed into his legs, face glowing. "You are the best sunflower I've ever seen," he said, kneeling to her level. "I told everyone my daddy would be here, and Ms. Peterson didn't believe me, but I was right." Lily looked over her shoulder. "Aunt Sarah said you were busy with important things." The innocent comment stung. "Nothing's more important than seeing you perform," Alexander replied, meaning it completely. Sarah approached, her expression guarded. "Lily, honey, go say goodbye to Miss Peterson. We need to leave soon." Once Lily was out of earshot, Alexander spoke quickly. "Sarah, please. It's been over 3 weeks. I've respected your boundaries, but I miss her. She misses me." "You can't just show up unannounced," Sarah said, though her tone lacked its usual edge. "You texted me about the play." As an FYI, not an invitation. Alexander took a deep breath. "What do I need to do? I'm not trying to buy my way in anymore. I just want to be part of her life." Sarah crossed her arms. "It's not that simple. Lily cried for days after your last visit, asking when her daddy was coming back with the big check to take her away." Alexander felt sick. "That's not what I know," Sarah interrupted, surprising him. "But she's 4. All she understood was that you wanted to change everything, and then you disappeared." Before Alexander could respond, Lily returned, tugging at Sarah's hand. "Can Daddy come for ice cream with us, please?" The adult's eyes met over Lily's head, Alexander's pleading, Sarah's conflicted. "Not today, sweetie," Sarah finally said. "Your dad probably needs to get back to work." "Actually," Alexander countered, "my afternoon is completely free." Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "Today isn't good, Lily. Maybe another time." Lily's face fell. "But I made a special picture for him at school yesterday." "You can give it to him next time," Sarah insisted. "When is next time?" Lily pressed, her lower lip trembling. Sarah hesitated, clearly caught between protecting her niece and acknowledging the hurt in the child's eyes. "I'll call to arrange something," she told Alexander, her tone making it clear the conversation was over. As they turned to leave, Lily broke free and ran back to Alexander, pressing a folded paper into his hand. "Here, Daddy. Don't forget me, okay?" she whispered urgently. "Never," he promised, his voice rough with emotion. Walking to his car, Alexander unfolded the paper, a crayon drawing of a man in a suit holding a little girl's hand in front of what appeared to be Rebecca's headstone. Both figures had enormous smiles. Across the top, in wobbly letters, "My daddy found me." The simplicity of Lily's perspective hit him like a physical blow. In her mind, their meeting hadn't been a random coincidence or a guilt-driven obligation. It had been a father finally finding his daughter. Back at his penthouse, Alexander made a decision. Words and promises weren't enough. Even consistent visits wouldn't be sufficient if Sarah remained convinced he would eventually lose interest or prioritize work again. He needed to demonstrate commitment in a way that couldn't be misinterpreted or dismissed. Opening his laptop, Alexander began researching. Not investment opportunities or market trends, but something far more important: how to truly become a presence in his daughter's world, even when direct access was limited. This wasn't a business challenge to be solved with strategic maneuvering. It was a matter of the heart that required something Alexander Reed had forgotten how to give: unconditional dedication without expectation of return. Alexander Reed's name was 15th on the volunteer sign-up sheet for Westside Elementary's playground restoration project. Not first, that would have drawn attention. Not last, that might have seemed reluctant. Just one name among many community members offering a Saturday to improve the school Lily attended. He arrived early, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, work gloves tucked in his back pocket. No designer labels, no chauffeur, nothing to announce that the man picking up a paintbrush was worth billions. "You're Alexander?" A woman with a clipboard approached. "I've got you assigned to the sandbox area. We're rebuilding it with new timber and fresh sand." "Perfect," he replied, already rolling up his sleeves. Throughout the morning, Alexander worked steadily, aware of curious glances from parents who recognized him from business magazines but were confused by his presence. He kept his head down, focusing on each task, speaking only when addressed directly. Around noon, he spotted them, Sarah and Lily arriving with a cooler of water bottles for the volunteers. He continued working, not approaching, not waving, simply present. When Lily inevitably saw him, her squeal of delight carried across the playground. "Daddy!" She broke free from Sarah's hand, running toward him. Alexander knelt, accepting her hug despite his paint-splattered clothes. "Hello, princess." Sarah followed more slowly, surprise evident on her face. "I didn't know you were volunteering. I saw the flyer in Lily's backpack during our last visit," he explained simply. "I helped paint the hopscotch squares," Lily announced proudly. "Want to see?" "I'd love to," Alexander replied, allowing himself to be led away, noting Sarah's thoughtful expression as they passed. When they returned, Sarah was distributing water bottles. She handed one to Alexander without comment, but their eyes met briefly. An acknowledgement, not quite approval, but not rejection either. The pattern continued. In the following weeks, Alexander appeared at community events: a library book drive, a park cleanup, the fall festival preparation committee, always working quietly, never drawing attention to his presence or attempting to use his wealth to influence proceedings. He was simply there, becoming part of the fabric of Lily's community. After the third such encounter at a fundraiser car wash for the local children's hospital where Rebecca had been treated, Sarah approached him as he meticulously cleaned wheel rims on a minivan. "What exactly are you doing, Reed?" she asked, handing him a fresh sponge. Alexander didn't look up. "Supporting causes important to this community." "This isn't the kind of philanthropy billionaires usually engage in," Sarah observed dryly. "No named wings or giant checks." "Maybe they're missing out," Alexander replied, moving to the next vehicle. Sarah worked alongside him in silence for several minutes before speaking again. "She asks about you. Every day." Alexander's hands stilled momentarily. "What do you tell her?" "That you're busy but thinking about her," Sarah admitted. "It's getting harder to explain why her father is everywhere in the neighborhood except at our apartment." Alexander straightened, finally meeting her eyes. "I'm respecting your boundaries. Sarah, you asked for space." "I know." She looked away, watching Lily help dry cars with other children further down the line. "And you haven't called or pushed or tried to use your resources to force the issue." She sounded almost confused by this fact. "I'm learning," Alexander said simply. Sarah studied him as if seeing something new in his paint-stained clothes and humble demeanor. "Lily has a field trip to the aquarium next Friday," she finally said. "They need parent chaperones." The invitation was indirect but unmistakable. Alexander nodded, understanding the significance of this small opening. "I'll sign up," he promised. As the day ended and volunteers dispersed, Alexander noticed Sarah watching him thoughtfully as he helped load supplies into a teacher's aging sedan, rather than his luxury car parked discreetly down the block. His phone buzzed with notifications about a potential major acquisition his company was pursuing, matters that would have consumed him entirely just months ago. Alexander glanced at the messages, then silenced his phone. Some investments required patience, presence and faith rather than immediate returns, and Alexander was beginning to realize which kind truly mattered. "Fish have families too," Lily explained seriously as she pressed her nose against the enormous aquarium glass. "See those little ones following the big one? That's like me and you, Daddy." Alexander smiled, crouching beside her to observe the colorful tropical fish. "The big one is protecting them." "Exactly," Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Just like you protect me." The irony wasn't lost on Alexander. He had protected Lily from nothing in her 4 years of life. It had been Rebecca and Sarah who shielded her from hardship, who created a world where she felt safe despite abandonment and loss. "Your group is moving to the touch pool," Sarah's voice came from behind them. As the official classroom parent, she'd been assigned to lead Lily's class, while Alexander and 2 other parents served as additional chaperones. For the past hour, she'd been professional but distant, directing children efficiently through the exhibits. Now, as Lily skipped ahead to join her classmates, Sarah lingered. "She hasn't stopped talking about you chaperoning since I told her," she admitted. "Told everyone at school her daddy was coming." Alexander's chest tightened. "Thank you for allowing me to be here." Sarah watched Lily giggling as she tentatively touched a starfish. "I've been unfair," she said quietly. "You've been protective," Alexander corrected. "With good reason." "Maybe." Sarah turned to face him directly. "But I've also been punishing you, using Lily to do it." The honesty surprised him. "I deserve punishment," he acknowledged. Sarah shook her head. "Not at Lily's expense. She needs her father, even if he's—" She trailed off. "Even if he's learning as he goes." Alexander finished for her. The hint of a smile crossed Sarah's face. "Something like that." Before they could continue, a commotion erupted at the touch pool. One of the children had accidentally splashed water onto another, resulting in tears and accusations. "I should—" Sarah began, moving toward the chaos. "Let me," Alexander offered, surprising them both. He approached the upset children, kneeling between them with the same focused attention he would give to arguing executives. The class teacher watched with interest as Alexander patiently negotiated a truce, ending with both children laughing as they properly petted the sea creatures. "Impressive conflict resolution skills," Sarah commented when he returned. "Board meetings aren't so different from preschool sometimes," Alexander replied dryly. For the first time, Sarah laughed, a genuine sound without bitterness or restraint. It transformed her face, and Alexander suddenly saw the family resemblance to Rebecca that had been hidden beneath layers of grief and hostility. "She had your laugh," he said before he could stop himself. Sarah's smile faded, but not into anger, into something softer, almost nostalgic. Rebecca laughed all the time, even at the end. An understanding passed between them in that moment. They both carried pieces of Rebecca that Lily needed. Sarah with her memories and fierce protection. Alexander with his connection to Rebecca's past and his place in Lily's future. As the field trip concluded and children boarded the bus back to school, Sarah made an unexpected proposal. "It's Friday," she said, watching Lily wave enthusiastically at Alexander through the bus window. "Maybe you'd like to come over for dinner tonight. Nothing fancy, just a meal together." Alexander felt as though he'd been offered something far more valuable than any business deal. "I'd like that very much." Later that evening, as he sat at Sarah's modest kitchen table watching Lily demonstrate her helper skills by setting out napkins, Alexander realized something profound. The hostility in Sarah's eyes had softened into cautious acceptance. Not trust, not yet, but a willingness to consider that people could change, that second chances might be possible. It was a small opening. But for a man who had learned to value the truly important investments in life, it was more than enough to nurture with care and patience. Remember, she likes the nightlight on, but the door cracked open, not closed, Sarah instructed, adding, to the growing list of Lily's preferences and routines. And if she wakes up scared, there's a spray bottle labeled monster repellent beside her bed. Alexander nodded, mentally cataloging each detail. What had begun as Friday dinner had evolved, over the past month, into regular meals together. Today marked a significant milestone. Sarah had agreed to let him stay with Lily for the entire weekend while she attended a nursing conference. "I've got it," he assured her, though his stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. Nightlight on, door cracked, monster spray at the ready. Sarah paused her packing to study him. "You're really nervous about this, aren't you?" Terrified, Alexander admitted with an honesty that would have been unthinkable in his boardroom. "What if I mess up?" Sarah's expression softened. "You probably will. Parenting is mostly messing up and hoping the good moments outweigh the mistakes." Coming from Sarah, this simple acknowledgement felt like absolution. She zipped her overnight bag and looked around the apartment one last time. "The emergency. Numbers are on the fridge. I'll have my phone. The children's hospital is 10 minutes away, I know." Alexander had already mapped the quickest routes to every emergency service in the area. "We'll be fine, Sarah." From the bedroom doorway came a delighted squeal as Lily emerged in pajamas decorated with stars. "Sleep over with Daddy," she announced. Bouncing on her toes, Sarah knelt to hug her niece. "Be good for your dad, okay? I'll be back Sunday afternoon." "We're gonna make pancakes," Lily informed her solemnly, "and build a blanket fort." "Sounds perfect." Sarah kissed her forehead before rising. At the door, she hesitated. "Thank you," she said quietly to Alexander, "for being here, for staying." The simple acknowledgement of his consistency meant more than any corporate award ever had. After Sarah left, Lily's excitement bubbled over. "Can we build the fort now, Daddy? Please?" What followed was an evening of unexpected joy. Alexander, who designed corporate restructuring with mathematical precision, found himself constructing an impressively elaborate blanket fort in the living room. Couch cushions formed the foundation, chairs supported blanket walls, and Christmas lights strung inside created a magical glow. Inside their creation, Alexander read 3 bedtime stories, each with increasingly ridiculous character voices that made Lily giggle uncontrollably. "Mommy used to make voices too," Lily said as they finished the final book, "but different ones." "Tell me about her voices," Alexander encouraged gently, treasuring these glimpses of Rebecca through their daughter's memories. "She did a really scary monster voice," Lily demonstrated with a growl that was more adorable than frightening. "But then a really tiny mouse voice for the little animals." Alexander smiled. "She was always good at voices. When we were in college, she would read my textbooks out loud using different accents to help me study." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? What's college?" "It's a big school for grown-ups. That's where I met your mom." "Did you love her right away?" The innocent question pierced Alexander's heart. "Yes," he answered truthfully, "though I didn't know it right away." Lily yawned, snuggling deeper into her pillow. "Mommy said you were her prince, but you had to go fight dragons." Alexander's throat tightened. Rebecca's metaphor for his departure was far kinder than he deserved. "Your mom was very generous that way." "Are you done fighting dragons now?" Lily asked, her eyelids growing heavy. "Yes," Alexander whispered, stroking her hair as she drifted toward sleep. "I'm done with dragons forever." Later, watching Lily sleep peacefully in the fort they'd built together, Alexander marveled at how completely his priorities had shifted. 6 months ago, he would have spent this Friday night reviewing acquisition projections or attending a charity gala to network with potential investors. Now, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside his sleeping daughter, surrounded by blankets and stuffed animals, Alexander Reed had never felt richer. 5 months after their first meeting in the rain, Alexander and Lily stood hand in hand before Rebecca's grave. The cemetery was transformed from that stormy night, now bathed in warm autumn sunlight, leaves in brilliant hues of red and gold drifting across the grounds. Today would have been Rebecca's 35th birthday. "Can I put the flowers now, Daddy?" Lily asked, clutching a bouquet of sunflowers. Rebecca's favorite. "Of course, Princess." Alexander helped her arrange them against the headstone, his chest tight with emotions he'd spent years suppressing. Sarah had suggested this visit, recognizing that both father and daughter needed to share this space together, this connection to the woman who had loved them both. "I brought something special too," Lily announced, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. She carefully placed it beside the flowers. "It's a card for Mommy's birthday. I drew us all together." Alexander glimpsed the crayon illustration, 3 figures holding hands beneath a smiling sun. The family that might have been. "That's beautiful," he managed, his voice rough. "Mommy can see it from heaven," Lily explained with certainty. "Aunt Sarah says heaven is everywhere at once." Alexander nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Seeing Lily's untroubled acceptance of this ritual, this relationship with a mother present only in memory, broke something inside him. He knelt beside the grave, tears finally breaking free after months of controlled emotion. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not caring if Lily heard. "I'm so sorry, Rebecca." Small arms wrapped around his neck as Lily hugged him fiercely. "Don't be sad, Daddy. Mommy doesn't like when people are sad too long. Sometimes we need to be sad for a little while," Alexander explained, wiping his eyes. "Especially when we miss someone or when we regret things we did." Lily considered this seriously. "Did you do something bad to Mommy?" The direct question deserved honesty. "I left when I should have stayed. I didn't listen when I should have heard." "But you came back," Lily reasoned simply. "That's what matters." "Too late," Alexander said softly. "Far too late." Lily shook her head with surprising conviction. "Mommy said it's never too late to do the right thing. That's why she kept your picture and told me stories. She was waiting for you to remember us." Alexander stared at his daughter, astonished by the wisdom in her childish understanding. Rebecca had maintained his presence in Lily's life despite his absence, not from naivety but from profound grace. "Your mother was extraordinary," he whispered. "I know." Lily nodded solemnly. "That's why I talk to her every night before bed." "What do you tell her?" Lily smiled. "Everything. Like how you make funny pancake shapes, and how you learn to braid my hair, and..." She paused, suddenly shy. "And how I'm not lonely for a daddy anymore." In that moment, kneeling before Rebecca's grave with their daughter's hand in his, Alexander finally understood the true meaning of wealth and the poverty in which he had lived for so long. Snow fell softly outside the window as Alexander hung the last glass ornament on the small Christmas tree in his newly purchased apartment. No longer occupying the minimalist penthouse that had once defined his success, he'd moved into a comfortable 3-bedroom unit just 5 blocks from Sarah's apartment. Close enough for impromptu visits, but respectful of boundaries that were gradually softening. 7 months had passed since that rainy night in the cemetery, and his life had transformed beyond recognition. His executive team now managed daily operations at Reed Enterprises, while Alexander worked remotely 3 days a week to prioritize school pickups and ballet lessons. "Is it straight, Daddy?" Lily asked, tilting her head critically at the tree they'd decorated together. Maybe a little crooked," Alexander admitted, adjusting the star on top. Lily nodded with satisfaction, then returned to her important task, wrapping a small package with considerably more tape than necessary. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf she'd selected for Sarah with Alexander's help. "Do you think Aunt Sarah will like it?" she asked, inspecting her handiwork. "She'll love it," Alexander assured her, smiling at the child's meticulous care with the gift. Christmas was still 2 weeks away, but the holiday already filled Lily's conversation. This would be her first Christmas without Rebecca, a fact that occasionally shadowed her excitement with moments of quiet sadness Alexander had learned to recognize and gently address. "Daddy?" Lily looked up from her wrapping, her expression suddenly serious. "I know what I want for Christmas." "What's that, princess?" Alexander asked, expecting the usual list of toys and books she'd been casually mentioning. Lily took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I want us to be a real family. You, me, and Aunt Sarah. All together." Alexander froze, caught completely off guard. "What do you mean, Lily?" "Like Emma's family. Her mommy died too, but now her daddy and her aunt are married and they all live in the same house." Lily explained this as if it were the most logical solution in the world. "Then I wouldn't have to go back and forth anymore." Alexander knelt beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Lily, sweetheart, family comes in many different forms. Sarah and I care about you very much, but we don't. Don't you like Aunt Sarah?" Lily pressed, her brow furrowed with childish concern. "Of course I do," Alexander answered truthfully. "Sarah is wonderful. She's kind and brave, and has taken amazing care of you. Then why can't we be together? Like a real family?" The doorbell saved Alexander from attempting to explain the complexities of adult relationships to a 4-year-old. Sarah had arrived to pick up Lily after her Saturday visit. "We'll talk more about this later," he promised, helping Lily hide her aunt's gift under the sofa. When he opened the door, Sarah stood bundled against the December cold, cheeks flushed and snowflakes caught in her hair. In recent months, she'd softened toward him considerably, their shared love for Lily creating a partnership neither had expected. "The tree looks great," she commented, stepping inside. "Much better than that sad little artificial thing in my apartment." "Aunt Sarah," Lily exclaimed, running to hug her. "We made Christmas cookies and Daddy only burned one batch." "Impressive," Sarah laughed, raising an eyebrow at Alexander. "Don't look so surprised," he protested good-naturedly. "I've been practicing." While Lily gathered her things, Alexander debated whether to mention her Christmas wish. "Sarah, there's something—" "Actually," Sarah interrupted, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I wanted to ask you something." "Of course." "Christmas Eve." She fidgeted with her scarf. "I know you probably have corporate parties, or—" "I don't," Alexander said quickly. "I've cleared my schedule completely." Sarah nodded, looking relieved. "Well, I was thinking, maybe we could do Christmas Eve together, at my place for Lily's sake," she added hurriedly. Her first Christmas without Rebecca, I thought familiar surroundings would help. "I think that's a wonderful idea." Alexander agreed, warmed by the invitation. "I'm ready," Lily announced, reappearing with her backpack. She looked between the adults with sudden interest. "What are you talking about?" "Christmas Eve," Sarah explained. "I invited your dad to celebrate with us." Lily's face lit up with such pure joy that both adults stared in surprise. "Yes!" she exclaimed, jumping with excitement. "Just like a real family." Sarah's eyes widened and she shot Alexander a questioning look. He gave a slight shrug, silently communicating they'd discuss it later. As they prepared to leave, Lily hugged Alexander fiercely. "It's working," she whispered loudly enough for both adults to hear. "My Christmas wish." After they left, Alexander stood alone in his apartment, considering Lily's innocent desire. The relationship between him and Sarah had evolved from hostility to tentative friendship, built on their shared commitment to Lily. They'd developed a comfortable rhythm, a mutual respect, even moments of genuine warmth and laughter. But a family? The idea seemed simultaneously presumptuous and strangely compelling. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "We need to talk about Lily's Christmas wish." "Coffee tomorrow?" Alexander smiled, typing his reply. "Absolutely, and for the record, I was going to tell you." The response came quickly. "Sure you were. 10 a.m. usual place. And Alexander, thanks for not encouraging this. Whatever it is." Standing by the window watching snow blanket the street, Alexander realized how completely his definition of family had transformed. Once it meant bloodlines and legacy, inheritance and connections. Now it meant bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes, school plays and scraped knees, shared concerns and small triumphs. Whether or not Lily's Christmas wish was possible, Alexander was certain of one thing. He was already part of a family more meaningful than anything he'd built before. And that was the greatest gift he could have received. Snowflakes drifted past the window of Sarah's apartment as Alexander carefully placed the last gift under the modest Christmas tree. The scent of pine mixed with cinnamon and cooking turkey, creating a warmth that permeated more than just the room. "Is Santa going to know I'm here and not at your house?" Lily asked, adjusting the ornament she'd made especially for this night. A paper star with 3 faces drawn on it. Hers, Alexander's, and Sarah's. "Santa knows everything," Alexander reassured her, straightening the star. "That's his superpower." In the kitchen, Sarah prepared dinner, occasionally glancing at father and daughter with an expression Alexander couldn't quite decipher. Their conversation about Lily's Christmas wish had been postponed repeatedly due to holiday preparations and work obligations, leaving an unspoken tension beneath their careful politeness. "Dinner's ready," Sarah announced, setting a golden brown turkey on the table. The meal progressed with Lily dominating the conversation, her excitement for Christmas morning making her practically vibrate in her chair. After dessert, while helping with dishes, Alexander finally broached the subject. About Lily's wish. He began quietly. Sarah focused intensely on rinsing a plate. "She's 4, Alexander. Children that age want simple solutions to complicated situations." "I know," he agreed. "I just want to make sure we're handling it consistently." Sarah paused, setting down the dish towel. "She asked me if I was going to be your wife, like in her friend's family. How do you explain adult relationships to a preschooler?" "With difficulty," Alexander admitted. "But maybe we should—" "Aunt." "Sarah. Daddy." Lily's voice interrupted from the living room. "I found something in Mommy's special box." They exchanged alarmed glances. Rebecca's memory box was kept on the top shelf of Sarah's closet, ostensibly out of Lily's reach. In the living room, they found Lily holding an envelope. "It has Daddy's name on it," she announced proudly. Sarah's face paled. "That's—" she whispered. I didn't know that was in there." Alexander gently took the sealed envelope from Lily. His name was written in Rebecca's familiar handwriting. You read it?" Lily asked excitedly. "Is it a Christmas letter from Mommy?" Alexander looked questioningly at Sarah, who seemed equally stunned. "Maybe this is something for me to read privately first," he suggested gently. "But I found it," Lily protested. Sarah knelt beside her niece. "How about we make hot chocolate while Daddy reads his letter? Special Christmas Eve hot chocolate with extra marshmallows." Once they disappeared into the kitchen, Alexander carefully opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before Rebecca's death. As he read her final words to him, words of forgiveness, not blame, of hope for Lily's future, not bitterness about their past, Alexander felt tears flowing freely down his face. Rebecca had known she was dying, had written not to condemn him for his absence but to release him from guilt so he could be fully present for their daughter. "She always believed you'd find your way back to us," Sarah said softly from the doorway, watching him with glistening eyes. "Even when I told her she was being naive." Alexander looked up, unable to hide his emotion. "I don't deserve this, Grace." "No," Sarah agreed, sitting beside him. "You don't. Neither do I for the ways I've failed. But love isn't about deserving. Is it? That's what Rebecca understood better than either of us." In the kitchen, Lily hummed Christmas carols, blissfully unaware of the healing taking place in the living room, or perhaps, in her childlike wisdom, perfectly aware of exactly what her Christmas wish truly meant. The winter snow had melted into spring blossoms, and Rebecca's grave no longer stood stark against a barren landscape. Vibrant flowers surrounded the headstone, some planted by cemetery staff, others brought regularly by Lily, Sarah, and Alexander over the past months. Today marked 1 year since Alexander had found Lily sleeping on her mother's grave in the rain. 1 year of transformation more profound than any corporate restructuring he'd ever engineered. "I still think it's too much," Sarah said as they walked through the newly renovated community health clinic. The Rebecca Morgan Memorial Wing? Alexander shook his head. It's not about the name. It's about what it represents. After months of deliberation, Alexander had finally found a way to honor Rebecca that didn't feel like buying absolution. The free clinic would serve families without insurance, families like Rebecca and Lily had been during Rebecca's illness. The facility wasn't ostentatious, but it was well equipped, staffed by dedicated professionals who understood the dignity of every patient. She would have approved, Sarah admitted, her fingers brushing against the simple plaque bearing her sister's name. Practical help, not just a monument. Lily skipped ahead of them, proudly showing her kindergarten teacher around the playroom designed for children whose parents were receiving treatment. Ms. Chen had become a steady support for all of them, helping Lily navigate her complex family situation with patience and wisdom. You've changed, Sarah observed quietly, watching Alexander greet the clinic staff without a hint of the corporate arrogance that had once defined him. Sometimes I can hardly reconcile you with the man Rebecca described from those last years. Alexander had long stopped denying his past failures. I was that man, he acknowledged, ambitious to the point of ruthlessness, believing success could only be measured in acquisitions and profit margins. And now? Sarah challenged gently. Alexander's eyes found Lily, now explaining to Ms. Chen how the books in the playroom were organized. Now I measure success differently. Their conversation was interrupted by the clinic director approaching with final paperwork. As Alexander reviewed the documents ensuring the clinic's funding for years to come, Sarah wandered into the memorial garden at the center of the facility, a tranquil space where families could find moments of peace amid difficult treatments. Later, as they picnicked in the park near their apartments, a Saturday tradition they'd established months ago, Alexander noticed a new gentleness in Sarah's demeanor. The defensive posture she'd maintained since their first encounter had gradually softened into something else entirely. I've been thinking about what happens next, Sarah said suddenly, watching Lily chase butterflies nearby. What do you mean? Alexander set down his sandwich, giving her his full attention. My nursing certification is almost complete. I'll be working full shifts soon. She twisted the napkin in her hands. Our current arrangement worked well when I had flexible student hours, but now. Alexander nodded, understanding the practical challenges their separate households presented. We could hire someone to help with transitions, though I know you prefer Lily not have too many caregivers. That's one option, Sarah agreed, then hesitated. I've been offered a position at the new clinic. That's wonderful, Alexander said, sincerely. You'd be perfect there. It would mean predictable hours, but still, Sarah trailed off, clearly working toward something more difficult to express. Alexander waited patiently, a skill he'd developed over months of co-parenting with Sarah. Lily needs stability, she finally continued. This back and forth works, for now but long term. I wonder if we need a more integrated solution. Alexander's heart rate increased slightly. What kind of solution are you envisioning? Sarah looked directly at him, the determination in her eyes reminiscent of Rebecca. I think we should consider living closer to each other. Maybe adjacent. Apartments in the same building, or houses in the same neighborhood. It wasn't exactly Lily's Christmas wish for them to become a traditional family, but it represented a monumental shift in Sarah's willingness to intertwine their lives. I think that's an excellent idea, Alexander replied, careful not to reveal how deeply her suggestion moved him. For Lily's sake, Sarah clarified quickly. Of course, he agreed, though they both knew their relationship had evolved far beyond reluctant co-parenting. Whether it was sharing Lily's school conferences, supporting each other through the grief anniversaries, or simply texting about funny things Lily had said, they had become genuine partners, perhaps even friends. There's a duplex available 3 blocks from the school, Sarah mentioned, her casual tone belied by her nervous fidgeting. 2 separate units, shared backyard. I checked it out yesterday. Alexander smiled at her thoroughness. Should we look at it together, Monday after work? Sarah nodded, visibly relieved. I'd like that. When Lily returned from her butterfly chase, she found the adults discussing housing options with an enthusiasm that made her suspicious. Are we moving? She asked, eyebrows raised in a perfect imitation of Sarah's skeptical expression. We're thinking about it, Alexander answered honestly. How would you feel about Aunt Sarah and I living closer together? Maybe sharing a yard where you could have that swing set we've talked about. Lily's eyes widened. Like Emma's family, all together? Sarah intervened smoothly. Not exactly like Emma's family. Daddy would have his home, and we would have ours, but they'd be connected. So I wouldn't have to pack my backpack to go between houses? Lily clarified, zeroing in on the practical benefit with typical child logic. That's right, Alexander confirmed. Lily considered this seriously. Would we have dinner together a lot, and breakfast? And could we still do movie nights like now? Sarah and Alexander exchanged glances, both recognizing that their current arrangement already involved more shared meals and activities than either had initially intended. Yes to all of that, Sarah promised. Then it's a good idea, Lily declared with finality before adding thoughtfully. Mommy would like it too. She always said families should stick together, even when things are hard. The simplicity of her statement brought unexpected emotion to both adults. Rebecca's legacy of forgiveness and grace continued to guide them, offering wisdom beyond what either could have navigated alone. As the afternoon waned and they packed up their picnic, Alexander found himself contemplating how completely his understanding of wealth had transformed. 1 year ago, his measure of success had been the corporate empire he'd built, the luxury penthouse, the influence he wielded in boardrooms. Now, walking between Sarah and Lily, listening to them debate which flowers they should plant in their potential shared garden, Alexander recognized the true wealth he'd gained, not in possessions or power, but in belonging and purpose. Later that evening, after returning Lily to Sarah's apartment, Alexander lingered at the door longer than usual. Thank you, he said simply. Sarah tilted her head questioningly. For what? For seeing the possibility of change when all evidence suggested otherwise. For giving me the chance to know my daughter. For... He gestured between them. This. Whatever it is we're building, Sarah smiled, a genuine expression that had become more frequent in recent months. Rebecca always said you had a good heart, just misplaced priorities. She was right about so many things. As Alexander walked the few blocks to his apartment, he found himself looking forward rather than back, not to business conquests or financial landmarks, but to the duplex they would view on Monday, to Lily's upcoming school play, to the garden they might plant together. It wasn't the life he had planned, certainly. It wasn't even the redemption he might have imagined. It was something both simpler and more profound, a second chance to build something of genuine value, guided by the grace of the woman he had lost and the child who had found him on a rainy night 1 year ago. The cemetery looked different in the sunlight. Vibrant spring flowers covered the once stark grounds, bringing color and life to a place Alexander had first visited in darkness and rain. 1 year had passed, exactly 1 year, since a sleeping child on Rebecca's grave had changed everything. Today, they came together, Alexander, Sarah, and Lily, to mark the anniversary not of death, but of reunion. I brought Mommy's favorites, Lily announced, carefully laying a bouquet of sunflowers against the headstone. At 5 years old now, she was taller, her missing front tooth replaced by a permanent one, her vocabulary more sophisticated, yet her essential Lily-ness remained unchanged. The open heart, the wisdom beyond her years. They're beautiful, Sarah said, adjusting the arrangement slightly. Remember how she always kept them on the kitchen table even when money was tight? Alexander watched the easy way they shared memories of Rebecca. No longer painful barbs, but treasured connections. His own relationship with Rebecca's memory had evolved too, from guilt-laden regret to something resembling peaceful acceptance. I have something too, he said, placing a simple framed photograph beside the flowers. The picture showed their new home, a renovated duplex with connecting doors that remained mostly open, a spacious backyard with the promised swing set, and all, three of them standing proudly on the front steps. Not the conventional family Lily had initially wished for at Christmas, but a family nonetheless defined by love rather than traditional boundaries. Lily knelt by the grave, touching the cool marble with familiar ease. "We're okay, Mommy," she said conversationally, as if Rebecca might answer. "Daddy doesn't work all the time anymore, and Aunt Sarah smiles a lot more. And I'm learning to read chapter books." Alexander and Sarah exchanged glances over her head, equal parts amusement and tenderness at her straightforward assessment. "And we help people at your special place," Lily continued, referring to the clinic. "Ms. Chen says it's making a big difference for lots of families." The Rebecca Morgan Memorial Clinic had indeed become a cornerstone of the community, providing care to those who might otherwise fall through the cracks of the healthcare system. Alexander's financial contribution had started it, but it was the passionate staff, including Sarah, now working part-time as a pediatric nurse, who gave it heart. "I think that's what Mommy would be proudest of," Sarah said softly. "Not the building or the equipment, but the people being helped." Alexander nodded, remembering Rebecca's fierce advocacy for those with less. She always saw what really mattered. As they stood together in comfortable silence, Alexander reflected on the journey of the past year. From the billionaire who valued nothing beyond business success to a father who now measured wealth in bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes. From the man who had abandoned Rebecca to one who honored her memory through presence and purpose. The transformation hadn't been instantaneous or perfect. There had been missteps, moments when old habits threatened to resurface, when work demanded attention that conflicted with Lily's needs. But each time, the memory of Rebecca's grace and the reality of Lily's trust had guided him back to what truly mattered. "Ready to go?" Sarah asked after a time, her hand lightly touching his arm, a casual gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago, when hostility and suspicion defined their relationship. "Almost," Alexander replied. There was something he needed to say, something he'd rehearsed on the drive over, but now found difficult to articulate. Kneeling beside Lily, he addressed the headstone directly. "Thank you, Rebecca," he said simply, "for forgiving what I couldn't forgive in myself, for giving Lily the father she deserved even when I wasn't there to be him, for seeing beyond my failures to what I could become." Lily leaned against him, her small hand slipping naturally into his. "Mommy always said people can change if they really want to." She was right, Sarah added, joining them. About so many things. As they walked back toward the car, Lily skipping ahead to examine a butterfly, Sarah fell into step beside Alexander. "You know what today really is, don't you?" "The anniversary of finding Lily," Alexander answered. Sarah shook her head slightly. "The anniversary of being found." When he looked puzzled, she continued, "You think you found Lily that night, but really she found you. The real you, buried under ambition and isolation." The insight struck Alexander with its simple truth. "Leave it to Rebecca to orchestrate a reunion from beyond," he said softly. Sarah laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully familiar over the past months. She always did like to have the last word. At the car, Lily was already buckling herself into the booster seat, chattering about the playground they'd promised to visit afterward. The ordinary Saturday stretched before them. Grocery shopping, Lily's dance class, perhaps takeout, and a movie in the evening. Nothing remarkable by conventional standards, yet everything meaningful in ways Alexander once couldn't have comprehended. As they drove away from the cemetery, Alexander glanced in the rearview mirror at the sunlit grave they'd left behind. The guilt that had once consumed him had transformed into something else, not forgotten, but integrated into the man he had become. A man who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in corporate acquisitions or stock valuations, but in second chances and everyday grace. "Daddy," Lily called from the back seat, "can we plant sunflowers in our garden so we can have some of Mommy's favorites at home too?" "I think that's a wonderful idea," Alexander replied, catching Sarah's affirming nod. "We'll plant them together." It seemed fitting somehow. These flowers that always turned toward the light even on the darkest days. Like Rebecca's legacy guiding them forward. Like a little girl sleeping in the rain who had awakened a father's heart. Like love that transcended absence, failure, and even death itself. Like family in all its unexpected forms.